All right, today we're going to begin to look at agents of disease. And before we start, we need to think about two vocabulary words. We need to think about the two right here in this title slide, microbes and pathogens. So what do you think a microbe is? All right, so a microorganism is too small to be seen with the naked eye. We usually think of them as living organisms, but viruses, remember we looked at on our graphic organizer last week when we talked about the kingdoms, are considered non-living because they don't meet all the criteria of the cell theory. So we're talking about things that are too small to be seen. They have can reproduce very quickly, and some are pathogenic. So using that word, what is a pathogen? All right, so a pathogen is an agent of disease. It can do harm when it invades another organism. So we're going to spend the next week looking at different types of pathogens. Now, all microbes are not pathogenic. Some do harm, some are helpful. So that's going to be really important to remember, especially with bacteria, because we need bacteria. Bacteria aid in our digestion. Bacteria aid in decomposing dead tissue, and so we really need bacteria. So most bacteria are actually good, but there are pathogenic bacteria. So let's look at, today we're going to cover just viruses. So viruses, their characteristics, how you can describe them are, first of all, they're not considered cells because they don't use their own energy to grow. They cannot make their own food. They do not produce waste. And they can only reproduce when they're inside a host cell. So those are the things that would describe a virus. Viruses do require a host, so they're considered a parasite because they harm their host. The host is where they get their source of energy, and most viruses actually destroy the cell they invade. And we're going to look at a video clip to show how that happens, and then tomorrow we're going to see a movie about how they can go in, invade, and be spread so quickly. So viruses have several shapes. They can be robot-like shaped, they can be bullet-shaped, they can be just look like a thread, they can be bricks, so rectangular, they can be round, or the bacteriophages are viruses that invade bacteria. So if you look on page 440 and 441 in the textbook, you can see these different shapes. So you've got the round chickenpox virus, you've got the robot-like virus called a bacteriophage that you see in the second picture, you've got the tobacco mosaic virus that is longer or thread-like, that attacks tobacco plants. You've got West Nile, which are also round. You've got the bullet-shaped rabies virus that attacks nerve cells in humans and destroys the brain's ability to want to drink water. So you've got several different shapes that a virus fits. Viruses are very small. They are much smaller than bacteria and other microbes. Viruses range from 20 to 200 nanometers, and a nano is just a billionth of a meter. So we're talking, a meter, it's about this long, a little over 3 feet, and you're talking a billionth of a meter. So if you look on page 442, you can see some examples talking about the different size microorganisms or microbes, or in this case they use a red blood cell, which is a cell that you have in the human body, but you have the red blood cell is 7,500 nanometers, and then the smallpox and the streptococcus are the larger two. Streptococcus is the one that is the bacteria that causes strep throat. Smallpox is the disease we've just about eradicated. But you can see as you go down, you can also see that the shape is different. And the yellow fever virus is very tiny, only 22 nanometers. So you are looking at very small microbes. So it's very easy to see how they can get inside a cell and invade. Viruses have been either named for the scientists who discovered them, the place they were found, or the disease they cause, much like we've seen other things such as the elements, how they have been named. Now, if you look down at the bottom of page 443, you see the example of, in the picture of the parts of a virus. Primarily, you want to think about the protein coat, which is the outer part of the virus. Notice the little, almost looks like pins sticking out of it. Those are like a key, and that's why the rabies virus only invades nerve cells, because the rabies virus key can only get into the cell membrane of a nerve cell. So it's kind of like viruses and cell membranes work with the lock and key system. So just like your locker, you can only get in with a certain combination or a certain key. A virus can only get into a specific host cell. So there's no virus that invades every cell of your body. They invade specific cells. The inner core is where the genetic material is found. Now, viruses must be inside a host cell to reproduce. There are two types of viruses, the active and the hidden virus. So the active virus, or the lytic cycle of a viral attack, means that as soon as the virus invades, it begins to take over the cell's either DNA or the cell's RNA, and it begins the destruction process. And if you've still got the book open, you can see on page 444 and page 445 the examples. So in the active virus, or the lytic cycle, the genetic material, you can see how it's breaking it apart, how it's invading it, how it reassembles, and then it begins to exit and immediately going to attack more cells. That's why you can start feeling bad and then within just a few hours be very sick, because the virus has invaded more and more and more cells as it reproduces, because it's got to make a copy of itself and reproduce to attack a lot of cells. Now, you also have hidden viruses, and that's also called the lysogenic cycle. You'll hear that. But in a hidden virus, the virus invades, gets in, and it just replaces part of the cell's genetic material and goes into hiding temporarily. And it may come out and make you sick and then go back into hiding. Hidden viruses never really go away. You just may not be actively sick. The cold sore virus, the HIV virus, the chickenpox virus are all viruses that hide in your cells, and you'll have an outbreak and then they'll go back into hiding. For example, with the chickenpox virus, once it goes, you get over being sick and it hides in your cells, then later on in life it may reappear as shingles, which is another variation of the virus. Now, the impact of viruses, for the most part, we would call negative. Short-term examples would be colds and the flu virus. Long-term would be viral diseases like rabies, which ultimately kills, HIV, which with antiviral drugs can be kept in hiding so patients can stay in remission now, and distemper is a disease that attacks dogs. There is a vaccine that dogs and cats take to avoid distemper. Usually it creates respiratory problems, and it can also attack the gastrointestinal system, central nervous system, as well as the eye. And it can be very dangerous to dogs and cats, which is why they get vaccinated when they are very young. Now, we have been able to somehow make positive uses of virus because they are so small. We can use them and because they go in and change the genetic material, some research is being done to in gene therapy, where we are, again, this is a form of biotechnology or genetic engineering, where you are taking a virus, you have reprogrammed its genetic material to something helpful, and then that virus is inserted in the cells that are not functioning properly. And for example, in cystic fibrosis, in the lungs, they become very sticky and they don't expand like they're supposed to. And so there's some research about using viruses to put the correct gene into the alveoli so that they no longer stick together, but they expand and contract like they are supposed to, and you can take in as much air as you need. So it stops that sticky mucus that forms in the lungs. So that is a positive way biotechnology and genetic engineering research is going right now, to actually use a virus to make something positive. Now, we're going to watch how quickly a virus can spread by looking at this NPR video clip about flu attack. And you're going to see somebody get the virus inside, and then you're going to see how quickly it can spread and why you can get sick so fast. Now remember this, there is no cure for viruses. You can't take an antibiotic to kill it. It has to run its course. Your immune system does its job, and then we take antiviral drugs to try to suppress the virus and get it to go back into hiding. So we can treat the symptoms, but we can't destroy it.